all carbs are not created equal. My relationship with carbohydrates continues to evolve. Before I started this metabolic reset and restoration 4 months ago, I estimate that my carb intake as a percentage of all calories that I consumed must have been in the 60, maybe 65% range. Today, I think that my carbs probably make up 15% of my diet. On day one of this metabolic journey, when I interrogated ChatGPT about what to do to achieve my health goals, it did not come back and say, you have to go on an all-protein diet and start drinking protein shakes and stuff like that. That would have just been a total deal breaker for me. And I quite possibly would not have even started this effort. Now, during phase one, which was approximately 6 weeks for me, phase one of this process depends on the person, but for me it lasted approximately 6 weeks, and there's no hard cutoff. It's a progression. Those first 6 weeks were really devoid of carbs, largely. Not completely devoid of carbs, but very light on carbs, heavy on protein, fat, fiber. As I moved into phase two, when my blood work was in normal range and my diabetes was under control, I suppose you could call it, I began to reintroduce carbs. And my first priority was bread. Now, my body reacts differently to different types of bread, or so I believe, because I haven't fully tested this out. And I tried pumpernickel bread, and I just didn't like that. That was not going to be, a solution for me. But I did find a rye bread, which, according to artificial intelligence, would be a type of bread with the least impact on my glucose curve. So I bought a couple loaves, it's sliced, and I began eating this bread at breakfast time. Not with a whole bunch of jelly, but rather with egg and cheese and often a slice of ham. My home version of McDonald's breakfast. And this really seemed to work. So this was how I started reintroducing carbs. I was able to enjoy a raclette dinner. So this is cheese and potatoes. And this is what Swiss people like to eat. And it turned out that because I was sequencing my meal by focusing on the protein first, eating the cheese first, and then bringing some potato in modest amounts, but still plenty to make me feel full, the potatoes were mixed together with the cheese, so with the fat and the protein. And so it wasn't what ChatGPT, I think, referred to as a naked carb. And so by sequencing my meal that way and mixing the foods that way, my body was able to tolerate those potatoes quite well. As I've come along in phase two, and phase two is sort of about, I mean, it can go up to a year. It can be a year. There are certain elements of phase 2, which I'm in right now, that can take many months to sort of graduate from into phase 3, which is the final phase. I feel like today I'm closer to phase 3 than I am to phase 1. I'm farther away from where I started and closer to where I hope to get, which is a sustainable lifestyle that that keeps my blood work in normal range, that minimizes the medication I have to take, and that preserves my morning vitality. And I know you know what I mean. So, to come back to the carbs, I continue to expand my experimentation with carbs. And so last week, I threw a frozen pizza that had been in a freezer since before I started this series, this documentary series, 121 days ago. And I thought, well, I'll have one slice and pair it with a luxurious salad, and I should be okay. So we had dinner, but I wasn't able to maintain myself to just one slice. I was hungry, and so I ended up having 3 slices of this store-bought pizza, Trader Joe's, and I'd added cheese on it and prosciutto to kind of, liven it up a little bit. And I ended up measuring my glucose a couple hours after, hour and a half maybe. And my glucose was as high as I've seen it in, I think, the last few months. It's very out of the ordinary. And the reason I'm telling and sharing this story is that that was not a lot of pizza crust. And my body reacted differently than when I would eat, for example, the breakfast with the rye toast. And the main difference was the crust. And that's where the carbs live. And I could have had the same amount of rye bread toasted and mixed with cheese and ham, and I think the top of my glucose curve post-meal would have been much lower. And so it was only last week and 4 months into this where this idea of the types of carbs are really critical to how my body reacts. And so pizza crust out of a box is going to be perhaps an occasional meal for me, but there's no solution there for me, that my body will spike its glucose with that type of carbohydrate. So my last tip is about carbs, which I've discovered, is that if a food item consisting mostly of carbs has been frozen and then defrosted, some of the carbs change their characteristics in such a way that they have less impact on rising glucose. And that's the reason that I freeze my rye bread. I buy it, I freeze it, and then I toast it when I'm ready to eat it. And that step is another way that my relationship with carbs is changing.